Good evening. Good evening. Is this on?
Doesn't sound. Can you hear it? I can hear it a little bit.
Good evening. Welcome to the City of Walker Planning Commission meeting, Wednesday, June 1. First item is calling the meeting to order. Second item is to review the meeting minutes from May 18. Any comments, questions? Offer of motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Support.
Motion by Tyler, supported by Steve, to approve the minutes of the meeting from May 18. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. At this point, it's an opportunity for general public comment. This is for anything that's not on the agenda this evening. Obviously, we've got people here for the various items that are before us, but if there's something of a general nature that you'd want to step forward, give your name and address, this is an opportunity to do so. Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the next item. These are agenda items. The first one is case number 22-011, review for River City Auto Building Addition. Look to Tricia Anderson, Planning Director, to introduce the project.
Thank you, Terry. So we have a site plan review before you tonight. The action requested by the Planning Commission is to review the site plan for a 1,123 square foot addition to the existing auto repair shop for River City Auto, and to grant approval with or without conditions, denial, or tabling of the request. The property address is 4020 Remembrance Road Northwest, and this lot is 0.4 acres or 17,424 square feet. The zoning district is C1 commercial, and future land use designation is mixed use and neighborhood node for a community character designation. The general location of the site is on the south side of Remembrance Road, just west of Remembrance Kinney Avenue intersection. And tonight we have with us Casey Peters from D&K Engineered Construction on behalf of the property owner, Chad Tyrell of River City Auto. They're both here tonight. So just to give you a little bit of background on the site, it's zoned C1 commercial, it's 0.4 acres, it's pretty small. The existing 2,220 square foot building was built in 1950 as a gas station, and a variance had to be granted, a use variance had to be granted in 1985 to allow for automotive repair in the C1. So that's why you see a really sort of busting at the seams use on really small C1 commercial site. So the folks from River City had to apply for a dimensional variance to be able to encroach into the rear yard setback. And so in February of this year, they received the variance to be no closer than 13.9 feet to that south property line. So this is what the existing conditions look like for the auto repair shop. As you can see, a lot of cars parked out front. They are in need of some extra bays here so that they can increase their operations. And they are, like I said, they're busting at the seams, and they are growing their business. And so that is the purpose for this expansion. So the site plan here, oops, go back. So they're proposing several improvements, a couple of notable ones to the existing approaches along Remembrance Road. They're also adding some street trees to go along with the theme that's along Remembrance Road. And they're also adding quite a few plantings on this side of the property, which abuts the residential over here. And the hashed area that you can see on the site plan is where the addition will be. So they'll be able to have three additional bays here. Is that correct, Casey?
2 there and 1 in the back.
Okay, so two here on this side and then 1 in the back over here. This area will be removed and then rebuilt. And so this will just increase the amount of space they have for vehicles inside, which is always a benefit. So I know I went through that rather quickly, but it's a pretty straightforward project, and it is my recommendation that the Planning Commission grant site plan approval for the 1,123 square foot addition to River City Auto and related site improvements located at 4020 Remembrance Road, subject to the conditions that the applicant shall address all the items outlined in the city engineer's report dated May 24, 2022. And the applicant shall also clarify there was a discrepancy with the square footage. In one place it noted that it was like 1,094 square feet, but then everywhere else it said 1,123 square feet. So we'll have the applicant clear up that discrepancy. And then also the applicant may be required to submit a financial guarantee to receive building occupancy before site-related improvements are complete, such as landscaping. So that's just a standard condition that we like to add to most site plan reviews. And I'm here for any questions you might have.
Commissioners, any comments or questions for Tricia? Okay, thank you, Tricia. Now we turn to Scott Counters, city engineer.
So you'll notice looking at this sheet that the sidewalk is not in the typical location of what we'd see, which would be 1 foot inside of the right-of-way. The reason for that is because there are some utilities in the way, and often when we see retrofits like this, we try to get a little bit flexible with that location. So that has happened here. The one thing is that we need to get some more dimensions on the upper part of the picture there to make sure that we get the transition called out with distance from the right-of-way and back of walk grades and things like that. Pretty basic stuff. And then Tricia mentioned that the site's pretty constrained. It's obviously true as you look at this picture here. They do not trigger the requirements to come into compliance with the stormwater ordinance, the new requirements for stormwater quality. But we have worked with them to make sure that they are mitigating any impacts, and they're doing that by installing a leaching basin, which allows the water to go back into the adjacent soils, and also with a pretty robust landscaping plan. That's something that we're trying to work towards with the new ordinance is counting trees as a benefit when you're looking at smaller sites like this with stormwater. And then the last item would be that leaching basin be 4 feet from the right-of-way line, and that's just so that they can build it without getting into the right-of-way and basically onto the city property. And that is it for engineering.
Thanks, Scott. Again, commissioners, any comments, questions for Scott? Okay. Seeing none, then we could have the applicant come forward, please, and again, give your name and address and any comments you'd like to add for this project.
Casey Peters, D&K Engineered Construction, 3509 3 Mile. Tricia said it all, but Chad's been doing business in this area since, 15 years now. And the project might seem small, but to his business, he's doubling his capacity, to 6 stalls from 3. It's a life changer for him. We've been working on it since 2019, and we're just glad that we can help him grow his business. That's really all I have to say. Appreciate your time. Nice for everybody to show up for us. Everyone gets a half off oil changes for everyone in the room, he said. That's it for me.
Any questions for the applicant?
Did you do the landscaping design, or who did that?
Twin Lakes.
Who did the landscaping, the choice of trees and stuff like that?
Dan Pastor at Twin Lakes.
I'm impressed. That's a lot of nice vegetation there. It's a good job.
Yeah, he takes pride in his work for sure. We use him pretty exclusively.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I have one question for you. I'm sorry. So expanding the building, there's always been a lot of cars there, an awful lot of cars. And so expanding the ability to do more, I guess we're not gonna see any relief from all the cars that are always parked there.
Well, the whole concept is to get more work, but there should be more in the stalls and less in the parking lot is the concept. He'll have 6 working on it at a time instead of 3. So it is gonna minimize the amount that are in the parking lot. Unless business increases, and then I can't really answer for that.
All right, thank you, Casey.
All right, thank you.
Now, this is not advertised as a public hearing, but again, if there's somebody in the audience that has a question about this, comment? Okay, thank you. Commissioners, it looks like a very straightforward project, and with good benefit in terms of, I think what Mark pointed out in terms of it's busy right now. The added capacity should be able to perhaps make it more efficient in that respect. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I can make a motion to approve project or case number 22-011. I'll make a motion to approve the proposed 1,123 square foot addition and renovations to River City Auto located at 4020 Remembrance Road. Subject to the following conditions. The applicant shall address the items in the city engineer's report dated 5/24/2022. The applicant shall clarify which square footage is correct and revise the plan to reflect this prior to the issuance of a building permit. The applicant may be required to submit a financial guarantee to receive building occupancy before site-related improvements are complete, such as landscaping, and the applicant shall submit 3 sealed revised plan sets with updated revision dates to the CDD prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Support.
Okay, motion by Steve, supported by Tyler to approve the project as described in the motion. Any questions? Being none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you very much. Good luck. Next item on the agenda is case number 22-012. This is a public hearing. It's a rezoning request involving property at 3777 and 3767 Remembrance Road. Again, look to Tricia Anderson, Planning Director, to introduce the project.
Thanks, Terry. So we have a rezone request in front of you tonight for 3777 and 3767 Remembrance Road Northwest. And so the action requested by the Planning Commission tonight is to review the request to rezone from C3 Highway Residential and to provide a recommendation to the City Commission for approval or denial of the rezone. Again, the property addresses are 3777 and 3767 Remembrance Road Northwest. The lot size for each parcel is 0.32 acres or 13,939 square feet. Current zoning district is C3. The future land use designation is residential existing density, and the community character designation is neighborhood preservation. And general location of the project site is on the north side of Remembrance Road between Justin and Ryan Avenues. And we have Dan Burrill of Southwood Builders, who is applying for this rezone. Is Dan here somewhere? There you are. Okay. If you want to, you can come have a seat up here. Otherwise, we can just call you when we're ready for your comments. It's nice to put people on the spot. So, zoning and general location for these 2 parcels is, it's a lot of the zoning in the surrounding areas is SA, which is suburban single-family residential. We do have some pockets of A2 up here off Richmond, and then an entire subdivision with two-family homes over here off Kinrow, Dublin, and Kinrow Court. And so the subject parcels, zones C3, are flanked by these two non-residential parcels. This is the Walker Child Care parcel, and then this is an office building with multiple tenants. One of them being, I think, Hulst Jespin Physical Therapy. And then, so these parcels are part of the Hogawind plat, which was established in 1956. And so it's not really clear whether the parcels were always planned for commercial use as part of that plat, or if they were rezoned at some point in time from residential to C3. But now we have an applicant who's looking to do some infill development, found these lots to be an appropriate place to apply for a rezone. And what's being proposed here are 2 duplex homes, and in order to build a 2-family home, you have to have the zoning to be able to do that. So when the Planning Commission is asked to provide a recommendation to the City Commission for a rezone, we've historically used this rezoning checklist to go through and make sure that we're checking all the boxes to make sure that we're making the right recommendation to the people who make a decision on rezones and land use. And so some of the highlights from that rezoning checklist I wanted to put out there for you is that the proposed rezone does align with the goals and vision of the master plan. So the master plan, as I pointed out, has a future land use designation of existing density, or I'm sorry, existing residential. Residential existing density. And then neighborhood preservation as a community character area. So going from commercial to residential in this particular area would be appropriate in terms of aligning with the master plan. And I also wanted to point out that that there is a need for what we would call missing middle infill development. And for those of you who have heard those words missing middle kind of thrown around a little bit in the midst of this housing crisis that we're in the middle of, it's characterized as homes that contain a range of occupiable units that are compatible in scale, form, and style with single-family homes in the surrounding neighborhood. So the idea is to make these 2-family homes fit in character with some of the surrounding single-family homes. And so another thing that we look at when we have to make a decision on a rezone is, okay, we have this zoning district that we're being requested to rezone to. Are the range of uses that are permitted within that zoning district, are all of those uses appropriate for that particular site? In this case, the range of uses within the 2-family zoning district, A2, they are compatible with the surrounding area. The range of uses, I provided a table in your packet, in my staff report. You know, just the same uses that would be allowed in a single-family neighborhood, such as single-family dwellings, and then we have that addition of 2-family dwellings. Also state licensed residential facilities with 6 or fewer persons, adult foster care family homes, foster family group homes, family daycare homes, and those are all largely regulated by the state. We do have some special exception uses, and those would be the ones that would be permitted in the A district. So those would be things like a library or a school or a church, or non-residential uses such as that. And so I think we can check that box in terms of the range of uses being compatible with the surrounding area. And so the proposed duplex design, and I'll show you a picture in a minute here, will mirror the character of the area. And that's what we're going for in terms of aligning, again, with the master plan. One of the other boxes that we need to check is if it is served by public utilities. So in this case, it is. There's both water and sewer in Remembrance Road. And, you know, according to my analysis, I do not foresee any negative impacts on the neighboring properties as a result of the rezone from highway commercial to residential. If anything, the residential, the two-family residential would be much less of an impact on the surrounding residential neighborhood, because as you know, the range of uses in the C3 highway commercial district has a lot of uses that could be considered incompatible with residential. So we believe that this is a step in the right direction for this area. So when we talk about existing residential character, this is a photo of a home that Mr. Burrill has built in, is it Byron Center? Yes. Okay. And then when we compare this duplex style home to some of the homes in the immediate vicinity, this is a duplex home built over on Richmond. And then this is one of the homes, sorry, the Google Maps image was kind of old, but this is one of the homes over on Ryan Court, which is within the same plat as the subject parcels. So I just wanted to demonstrate that the proposed use and the proposed design will be in character with the surrounding homes, the existing homes. So recommendation, I am recommending that the Planning Commission forward a favorable recommendation to the City Commission for the approval of the rezone of the parcels located at 3777 and 3767 Remembrance Road. And I did draft a property rezone ordinance for you to review, which is what the City Commission will use when they do their first and second reading of the rezone request. I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Tricia. Any questions for Tricia on this? Okay. Scott, I'm trying to recall if you had any perspective to add on this?
No, we steered clear of this one.
Okay, all right. Yeah, this is a land use issue, and so at this point, give the opportunity for the applicant to come forward and offer any comments regarding the project.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tricia. Dan Burrill, Southwood LLC, 4565 Wilson Avenue in Granville is my mailing address. This is a really exciting project. Mitchell here and his dad Fritz is the landowner, and they own the building next door, the Hulse Jepson building right there. And they really feel this would be a great transition from their office to their two-family homes. These are homes that they've seen of mine in the city of Kentwood and in city of Wyoming on Byron Center Avenue, right there at the north end of the Pines Golf Course is where we just most recently built that, and that picture was shown. We found that having the two-stall garages in both of these other municipalities they went to was essential on, maybe I shouldn't say other mistakes that I felt we've made in the past. I've made them built these with single-stall garages before, and the two-stall garages just keeps so many things out of the neighborhood, out of the front of the house. It keeps the bikes. It keeps so many toys, trash cans. It keeps things in the garage. Keeps a grill on the back deck. These are also homes that we've really took a lot of time on room sizes and making sure it's just, again, it fits in with the neighborhood. It's something that we're proud of, something that the city can be proud of. So when we come back to you someday on something else, you'll know what we do, how we do it, and you know that we stand up and are people of our words. So again, we're really excited about this project, and I know Mitch is excited about the project, and again, I'm here for any questions that you might have regarding these two homes.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? I think in the packet that was provided to the planning commissioners, the very last page had a photo that I think was skewed a little bit. I think that Tricia put up on the screen something that is in proportion and I think reflects, I believe, what the applicant is looking to put up. Any discussion? In terms, I think that Tricia, in her presentation, she went through the rezoning checklist, and from my standpoint, I'm in agreement that they do check all the boxes in terms of the parameters we look at for a rezoning request.
This is a public hearing.
Very good.
I make a motion to open the public hearing.
Thank you.
Got a motion by Tyler, supported by Steve, to open the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now, this is public hearing is open, so if there's anyone here in the audience that would want to come forward, give us your name and address and any comments you have with regard to this particular project. Okay, we did get some emails, I think, regarding this right here. We got one with regard to that, so that'll be put as part of the record as well. But it appears there's no comments here, so.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing by Tyler,
Support.
supported by Pat. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Public hearing is closed. Now for our deliberations. Any other comments? Motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion for 3767 Remembrance Road Northwest, 3777 and 3767 Remembrance rezone request, case number 22-012. I make a motion to forward a recommendation to the City Commission for the approval of the request to rezone parcels at 3777 and 3767 Remembrance Road Northwest from C3 Highway Commercial to A2 two-family residential.
Got a motion by Tyler. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Pat. If there's no question, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you very much. All right. The next case on the docket, case number 22-007. This is a public hearing on a proposed development, Greenridge and Dakota Drive. Again, Tricia Anderson, Planning Director, if you could introduce the project.
Thanks, Terry. So we have a PASP request for you at 402 Dakota Drive. 740, 350, and 330 Greenridge Drive is the addresses of the subject parcels. And so the Planning Commission is being asked to review the PASP for the 186 unit multifamily development known as River Ridge Townhomes, and to grant approval with or without conditions, denial, or tabling of the request. Again, the project type is a PASP, which is Preliminary Area Site Plan for a multifamily residential development. The total of, the aggregate of the lot size of the lots is sized at 49.24 acres. And the zoning district is RPUD2, high density residential. And there's a future land use designation of residential existing density and neighborhood preservation for the community character designation. So the general location of this site is on the east side of North Center Drive, River Ridge Court, and Weatherford Drive. And I believe we have The applicants with us tonight, Brandon Simon of Progressive AE, on behalf of the owner, Scott Wierda of Jade Pig Ventures. And we also have a representative from Jade Pig, Jeff, I'm gonna butcher your last name. That. Thank you. This one slide does not really give a true representation of the history of this parcel. We know that this parcel for the last 100 years hasn't had any, or the subject parcels, I should say, hasn't had any development on them since it was the Masonic Country Club, which was in business from 1921 to 1931. And so the folks from that country club sold to Greenridge and they moved out to Egypt Valley. And Greenridge Country Club became the owner in 1931. And then in 1988, Greenridge was purchased by a developer, and the golf course property was rezoned to CPUD and RPUD2 in 1989. But that wasn't without a lot of supporters and opposition, such as yourselves that are in the room tonight. So back in 1989, the City Commission approved the rezone, but as Michigan zoning law allows, the zoning was placed as a referendum on the ballot so that the registered voters of Walker could vote on the zoning issue. But at that time there wasn't enough support to, or there wasn't enough voter opposition to reverse the City Commission's decision to approve the rezone. So the rezone to RPUD2 prevailed. So then following the vote on the ballot in 1988, a group of citizens brought a lawsuit upon the developer of the property, which resulted in a consent judgment, and the terms of which are still in effect today, we've discovered. So again, this is just a snapshot of the history. I'm sure there's a lot more of it, and I'm looking at some of your faces, and I'm guessing that a lot of you have been around since the very beginning. So, well, maybe not since 1921. I'm really talking about the 80s, but thank you, Tyler. So these are the existing conditions. You know what, in looking at multiple aerial photos, as we do, in my position, I've got access to lots and lots of maps, but I felt like this sort of 3D map just from Google sort of portrayed the property and its character a little bit better than some of our bird's eye view images, because this one shows just how much vegetation is really on this parcel, these parcels, I should say. It's heavily wooded. There's a lot of steep slopes, and according to the neighbors that live next to this piece of property, it's a gorgeous piece of property. And so what I want to do is kind of give everybody an idea up front as to what we plan on doing tonight. We have had considerable amount of review of this project. It's been reviewed by staff. It's been reviewed by folks from neighboring municipalities. It's been reviewed by commissioners, planning commission, attorneys, and I just want to kind of go through some of the process steps that this project will face with the city of Walker. So right now they're requesting a townhome development with 186 units. And so, as I mentioned earlier, this is a preliminary area site plan review. So that is the step of this process. This is not the final step. This is not the last stop. This is the actual first stop. And so just to give you an idea of what we're reviewing when it comes to a preliminary area site plan, in 1989, when another PASP was approved after the rezoning was approved, it called for 186 units. Those were condo units back then. Because there's been so much time that's lapsed and no action was made on that development, that particular development did not come to fruition, we have to kind of start from scratch again with having another PASP review. And so this is just a broad review of the project. We're asking the applicant to request minimums for dimensional requirements. And so this is the process step where those dimensional minimums get set and they kind of get locked in. And then we're also looking at density allowances and what's the maximum going to be here. So high level, we're saving all of those nitty-gritty details for the next process steps. And so here's just a snapshot of what's being proposed. I could go into every single proposed improvement, but what I'd like to highlight is the focus of tonight's meeting is really to allow the public to get a lot of their comments to the Planning Commission, get your voices heard, provide some background to the Planning Commission, if you read my staff report, you already know that staff is recommending that the Planning Commission table any action tonight because we still kind of have a lot of questions. And so we'd like to take tonight as an opportunity to provide some direction to the developer as to some next steps going forward, and again, give you guys some background and just a good explanation of how this whole process works. So I like to use this slide. You've probably seen this from some of the other developments that have come through. And so when it comes to planning a development like this, typically a rezone is first, right? But as we know, the zoning is already in place. So this box has already been checked. The rezone requires a recommendation by the Planning Commission. That's already been done. The City Commission has already approved the zoning. That's been done in the 80s. So here we are at your typical step that follows a rezone with the PASP request. So this one gets reviewed by the Planning Commission. And while it looks like the Planning Commission is your last stop with the PASP, it's likely that there could be several Planning Commission meetings just considering the PASP. We generally, as staff, don't like to bring projects to the Planning Commission unless we know they're approvable, and Scott and I can get up here and publicly say that we're comfortable with what's being proposed. So as with the PASP as the first step here, and again, it's the overall broad view of the project, broad review of the project. If the Planning Commission approves the PASP, which they won't do tonight, but in the future they could, the next step would be for each phase. If you had a chance to look at the plan, you would see that each, that the subject parcels are sort of broken out into a north and then a central and a south phasing sections. And so each phase would come back to the Planning Commission for all of those really fine detailed reviews. So we'd be looking at much more detail, like number of landscape plantings, the illumination levels of any lighting that's proposed. Scott's going to be looking at stormwater calculations and making sure that that what's proposed in terms of stormwater management is meeting the stormwater ordinance standards. So there's a lot of steps left if the Planning Commission approves the PASP. So, as I said, I'm not going to go through each and every improvement, but I do want to focus on some of the site limitations. So when you have a density of 186 units that are being proposed on almost 50 acres, you would think that it might be somewhat feasible. However, there's a lot of environmental limitations on the site as it pertains to some steep slopes. There's a lot of challenging and wild topography out there. And that's generally we don't want to mess with steep slopes. There's also an alpine walker drain over there, so that's under the jurisdiction of the Kent County Drain Commission, but it runs through the property, and Frank Wash, who's our assistant city manager, who's here tonight, he has a long history with really getting to know that drain, even before he became a planner and walker. So he has a lot of that history in his pocket. There's also the consent judgment that identifies a 150-foot buffer between the residential homes on the eastern edge of the subject site. And, you know, this, after doing an analysis with our planning consultant and talking about the future land use of this parcel, we know that this really is a transition area between single family and multifamily, which borders commercial. And so, with that said, we have a lot of remaining concerns. We've received a lot of feedback from all of you. Obviously, you wouldn't all be here tonight if you weren't passionate about this property. And so what we've learned from some of you and some of the concerns that a lot of you are having, I have listed here. We met with a couple of the residents yesterday, and we kind of wrote down all the main concerns that the neighbors have been kind of talking about with each other. And some of these items are valid, and some of them are areas that we would like to explore a little bit further. And so one of them being that the survey isn't current. And as we know, creeks and drainage areas, they move a lot. And so the survey that was part of the plan set was from 2002. So we'd like to see an updated Topo survey. We'd like to know what impacts there would be on the alpine walker drain. Are there any wetlands on the site? There's a lot of people who have mentioned some low wet areas, and they're concerned that it's going to get worse, and that their basements might flood or their sump pumps are going to be running constantly. Are there any threatened or endangered species on site? One of the neighbors had brought up that concern, and so that one is, you know, making contact with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources and you know, having them look into that. What, if any, traffic impacts may the pose? You know, originally we talked about how a traffic study might not be necessary. Some of those intersections out on Alpine are, you know, they're already operating at a pretty low grade, but there are some improvements that are being proposed, which we think would have a benefit to any additional traffic coming out onto Alpine from this area. And then Is the proposed PASP truly consistent with the master plan? A lot of you were asking that question as well. And so I think exploring that a little bit further is going to benefit all the parties involved. And one question we talked about with staff is, can this site be designed differently to be more sensitive to steep slopes and drainage and preserving as many trees as humanly possible? And so, again, the goal for tonight's meeting is to hear all the public comments, and for me to be able, Scott and I and the applicant, to provide some background to the Planning Commission and to the public. And we would recommend that the Planning Commission table any action until the applicant's able to answer some of those questions for us. And then we have a couple suggestions to perhaps hold a work session between the applicant and the Planning Commission, kind of like we did with the Lincoln Country Club people. And we may suggest to hold a site visit. But those are things that the Planning Commission will want to provide some direction in as far as next steps go. So I'm going to stop talking so that the applicant has a chance to, well, before I do that, I'm going to hand it off to Scott for his main comments that he has regarding the project.
I guess first off, any questions of Tricia on what she's covered thus far?
I thought that was an excellent presentation of a very complicated situation. I thought you did a very good job. Thank you.
Okay. We'll move forward to City Engineer Scott Connors.
Okay, Tricia was very thorough, so I don't want to be too redundant here. But essentially, our review is not a final engineering detail. I think she got that point across. This is a preliminary area site plan. It's really, when you look at the details that are on here, they're more of a proof of concept. Does this seem feasible? And that's how we've essentially looked at this. So right off the bat, we want to make sure that the plans are sealed by a professional engineer. They're coming under a lot of eyes and a lot of scrutiny, obviously, so we want to make sure that everyone puts their best foot forward that way. If this project was to be considered, we would have to firm up the terminus of Greenridge Drive up at the top of the hill, meaning that there's a small cul-de-sac there that is on the private property, and so we have to get that into an easement so that we could have plow trucks turn around, so that people that lived in that neighborhood could turn around with boats and RVs, UPS trucks, things like that. When we looked at the phasing, what we want to do is try to minimize the number of units that are out there off one access. And this is a good picture to look at when considering that. So we don't want to have like two phases go in with 100, 120, 130 units all off of one driveway, because if there's an accident, if there's a water main break, if a tree falls down, anything like that, or even just maintenance on the road, they would only have one way in and out. So by the time you get to phase two, we want to make sure that they've got that redundant access in place. The drainage is something that's probably going to be talked about a lot out here. It's very, very complex. The northern portion of the site, as we've discussed, flows to Alpine Walker Drain. There's quite a history to that. It's been fairly quiet over, I would say, the last 10 years, but in the late 90s and the 2000s, we spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of money working with our neighbors in Alpine Township and also at the drain office to put in regional detention ponds and new ordinances, and to make sure that any new development, like if you remember the old Kmart site that's now the Alpine Summit commercial area, when those come in, that they make up for their lack of detention in the past. And so they've all had to kind of come into compliance with the ordinance, and we've seen some positive things happen, which is great, but that doesn't take away from the fact that there's a 66-foot difference in elevation between this site and 4 Mile Road, meaning that the downstream channel is quite steep. And so in the preliminary discussions we've had with the developer, we've made them aware of that. I did learn they have reached out to the drain office, which is a good sign. And if this moves forward, there would be a very collaborative review, I think, with Alpine and with the drain office. And then on the south part of the site, they have water on their proof of concept is shown to go through a side yard that, as we looked at that in some more detail, I think we'd want to work with them to have them reroute that. But again, those are things that would happen with the final engineering plans and as part of a comprehensive drainage study that they would have to prepare. Lastly, they do seem to meet all the minimum geometric standards that we've asked for in terms of how far back is the garage from the roadway, how wide are the sidewalks, how wide are the roads, public and private driveways. So all those things do seem to be met. We wouldn't have too many arguments there. I think now it's more about zoning and land use and density. And so for me, I'm just here to listen to the public comment a lot like you, and then answer questions that the planning commissioners might have that might have an engineering slant to them. That's it for us.
Thanks, Scott. Again, commissioners, any comments or questions for Scott at this point? Okay, seeing none. At this point, we would look to the development team as they come forward and provide a presentation on the project. Again, if you could give us your name and address, and thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Jeff Stahoviak. I'm with CWD Real Estate, located at 50 Lewis Street Northwest, Suite 600 in Grand Rapids. I'm here as the Director of Development for CWD Real Estate, representing Jade Pig Ventures for the preliminary area site plan approval. A lot of my comments here that I was going to make, Tricia, you really dove into the detail already on it, so thank you for that thorough explanation for what we're here for today. As the Director of Development for CWD Real Estate, I'm representing Scott Wierda and Brian DeVries of Jade Pig Ventures that have owned the property for the last 24 years, I believe. Scott is a managing partner at CWD Real Estate, and we will be leading up the development and management of these townhomes as we move forward with this. Scott and Brian have a very successful history of developing a lot of really great projects here in Walker and in the Grand Rapids area, and we look forward to this being another one of those. And as you mentioned, Tricia, we're here to present our preliminary area site plan approval. We're not here for any rezoning. We're already zoned, as you mentioned, and we're here for that initial phase. I've brought with me Pat Lennon from Honigman as our legal representation, and Brandon Simon from Progressive, our design partner, is going to give a little more presentation on the project itself. To date, we've gone through two site plan review committee meetings, heard a lot of very informative comments in those, and taken those into consideration in our preliminary area site plan here. In the recommendation that was written for this meeting, there was 21 items that were noted to address. Since that recommendation has gone out, we've sent those responses over to the city planner, Tricia. And there was also a recommendation that we hold a neighborhood meeting, which invitations went out to neighboring addresses this evening, and I invite anybody that would like to attend. Next Wednesday, June 8th at 5:30 p.m., we'll be hosting that community meeting at a property that Jade Pig owns at 318 Greenridge, the Mercy Health Building, on the second floor, just south of the planned project. So based on the recommendations you gave and everything that we've gone through in the site plan review committee meetings, where we continue to address your concerns and are happy to discuss this project further with the community next week, Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. With that, I'd like to invite Brandon up to give a few more details and information on our project. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Tricia, for the intro. I just wanted to give a high-level overview of the project, some of the breakdowns and areas and stuff like that we're shooting for.
Could you state your name, please?
I'm sorry, Brandon Simon with Progressive AE at 18114 Mile. So as Tricia mentioned, the project is roughly 49.5 acres, and it's going to house 186 units, which breaks down to about 3.8 units per acre. That 186 units mirrors I believe the older plans that you had in the agenda packet as well. So the site is surrounded on the northeast and sort of the south end by single family, and then across the road on North Center is high density apartments. So our plan moving forward would be 3 phases, working south to north. So we're kind of splitting it into thirds, with phase 1 being on the south end of the project. And just a quick breakdown, phase 1 would be roughly 56 units. Phase 2 brings another 80 units, and then Phase 3 to the north would be 50 units to close that out. The project would contain in Phase 2 a dog park, and then on the first phase to come online, we're planning some playground equipment and stuff in one of the large open spaces, kind of in the center of the loop road. And then as far as grading and utilities, Scott had mentioned that there's some challenging grades on the site. We did look through quite a few different layouts, and you'll see that this is different than some of the older stuff from the 80s. The intent there is to try and minimize impacts on grading. On the northwest corner of the site is a large drain. And then again on the south end of the site, the south third, which we are not touching. So there's, yep, exactly where the mouse is there. So the property kind of necks down there, and our development occurs north of that southern drainage area. So I know there's some steep slopes in there. In an attempt to mitigate soil erosion concerns and stuff, we've elected to not develop anything in that south area. And then again on the north side, all the development occurs above the top of slope, or top of slope down to the drain. We've had some discussions with the drain office and with Alpine Township, and moving forward, as Scott mentioned, understand that we're going to have a collaborative design, and I think Kent County has some plans for the drain as well. So we have some stuff we need to work through there, and we'll continue to work with Scott and the Drain Commission on that. As far as a grading scheme, the existing site is kind of split. It's hard to tell on that, but kind of where the neck is on the larger parcel, there's a drainage divide that goes north to the Kent County drain and then south to the drain that bisects our site east-west. Our intent with our proposed layout is to maintain that drainage divide. So we're going to have a pond on the north end of the property and a pond on the south end of the property that would discharge to existing drainage courses. And as far as utilities, we are planning to extend public water and sewer through the site. The stormwater infrastructure is going to be placed to maintain that divide that I had mentioned. And there are some ongoing projects with the City of Walker and City of Grand Rapids for public utilities that run through the site east to west that will be providing us with a sanitary stub for this project somewhere down the line. So I think that pretty much wraps up my engineering end of things. I'm happy to answer questions from either the Planning Commission or the residents if anything pops up. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for either of the representatives of the developer at this point?
I have one. Jade Pig owns the property, correct?
Yes, sir.
Who's developing it?
CWD Real Estate?
So what's the relation to Jade Pig?
Scott Wierda is a managing partner at CWD Real Estate and an owner in Jade Pig Ventures.
Yeah, but are they two separate companies?
They're two separate companies. We'll run the development project for Jade Pig.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. This is a public hearing, so.
Motion to open the public hearing.
Motion to open a public hearing by
Support.
Steve, supported by Tyler. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. As we prepare to take public comment, bearing in mind we've got a large number of people here, we have received and will be made part of the record emails and perhaps even letters that we've gotten in advance, so those will be part of the record as well. But this is an opportunity for public comment. Given the number of people here, we're looking at a case, and this is our standard, is that someone coming forward, give your name and address. You'll be given 3 minutes to provide your statement. And if it's a case where if somebody has already made the comment that you want to raise the point, if you could just indicate we're in agreement with such and such, that might make this more expeditious. But on the other hand, we want to hear from everybody if you have something to say. So at this point, the first person that comes forward and probably have to hit the button in order to activate the mic.
Sorry, I've been talking a while. Good evening. My name is Emily Glover. I'm at 319 Greenridge. And on behalf of myself and my neighbors who have assembled here today, I want to thank you for holding this hearing so that not only can we express our concerns to the Board of Planning and Zoning, but more directly to Jade Pig and their representatives. You see, we understand that as the owners of the land in question, they have rights to the property and can do with it as they see fit. However, we hope that after hearing our valid concerns about this property being developed as a high-density residential area, that you realize that the pursuit of this proposed development will ultimately fail due to the complex issues of the topography and the systems of creeks, rivers, and streams. It may not fail during the development phase, but it will eventually fail its residents, the established neighborhoods, residents, and properties surrounding it, and all the wetlands, rivers, creeks, and all that depend on those. Before I pass it on to my neighbors, I hope that JPEG and the representatives and affiliates also consider the needs of the community, of which, as someone who is building within this community, will be a part of. According to the master plan, this first ward, which the property is included in, has 30% of the city of Walker's dwellings, which 50% of those are already rental units. The area you are proposing to build as a high-density residential area is one of the only undeveloped green spaces left between alpine commercial developments and residential communities. According to the Urban Climate Lab at the Georgia Institute of Technology, if you have less green cover, you will almost always have higher temperatures and greater exposure to heat. The clearing of trees, the covering of the ground, and non-porous ground coverings add to the decrease of the ability to evaporate and cool the air. Additionally, in the same study, the increase of heat leads to the increase in issues for those with chronic and serious issues such as asthma, COPD, heart disease, and diseases similar to those. The ages that make up 43% of the population, 40 to 70 years old, make up 43% of the population. These populations are most affected by these chronic health issues. So I hope that Jade Pig, their affiliates, the people they're working with, will really consider the really high impact this type of development will have on not only our neighborhood, but then all the neighborhoods that surround it. So I'll now pass it on to my neighbors, and I thank you for your careful consideration on what we all have to say today.
And that was exactly 3 minutes, so.
Good evening. My name is James Sturkin. I live at 3460 Bayberry Drive, Northwest, here in Walker. I just have a few questions for the commission, and thank you for this opportunity. Is the consent judgment available? Could we be provided a case number or some way to access the consent judgment that is still in force, we're being told? Thank you. Appreciate that, thank you. And in addition, are the PowerPoint slides and all of the presentations of this meeting going to be available for us to review? And you know, it's kind of hard to see those screens.
Yes, I will make them available.
Thank you. And then finally, it seems we are at such a preliminary phase of this proposed project that any public comment seems to be impossible to make really any kind of specific or focused comments unless we have specific and focused detail. Will there be future opportunities to make public comment when we know more about this project?
Yes, the recommendation that staff has provided the commission this evening is to table action and adjourn the hearing so that there'd be an opportunity later in this preliminary site review to take that comment. And likewise, as Tricia pointed out, there's another a step where more detail is provided so that you can have more focus right on particular parts of the project. So there will be those opportunities available.
Thank you, and I know I said finally, but I guess P.S. finally. There may be some impact on watersheds. I believe part of this property is located in the York Creek watershed, and I'm not sure where the southern part of this property, which watershed that would be in, but there may be impact on quality of water, aquatic life, things of that nature that should be considered. Thank you all very much.
There you go.
Hello, I'm Mark Fairgrieve, 563 Kingsbury, and I'm here with some of my neighbors who live in the Kingsbury Gage neighborhood. And the first thing I do want to make mention of to the committee here is that the first round of postcards that we were sent for a May meeting, I believe it was May 4, was sent a week after the date of the meeting. So that's a major cause for concern for the neighbors on Kingsbury. We would appreciate timely, because we're direct borders of the west side of this property, which leads me to my next point, which is the northwest and west sides of what I would believe would be phase 3 of the development, if that's the most northern phase. With the Alpine Walker County drain that runs through there along the north and west side of the property, that area where Kingsbury terminates into the pump station or the lift station for the water and sewer system, that is a very, it could potentially turn into a throughway from the proposed project to Kingsbury. And so I had mentioned, or reading through some of the items here, we saw that there was a items number 9 talking about worn path. If there are no sidewalks or walking spaces that will lead to people hanging out in the woods. That is a very big concern for the Kingsbury neighborhood, because that is a direct throughway to Alpine Avenue. So what we would like to ensure is that there's not pedestrian traffic going from the proposed site to the eastern end of Kingsbury, where the pump station is, because the drain, it's not full year round, so sometimes people can fjord that. It's not that difficult. But even given the steepness of the slopes, it will invite shortcutting through the Kingsbury neighborhood to Alpine Avenue. So we would like to have some kind of boundary around the property, so we cannot have that type of foot traffic. And so thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you.
To the commission, my name is Tom Altmeyer. I live at 400 Dakota Drive, and this is the last property in Walker before it crosses into Alpine Township. And before I get into my prepared remarks, 402 Dakota is part of the presentation tonight. That parcel sits in Alpine Township and is zoned residential, but the acreage for that is only 2.17 acres, and it would not affect the 186 units they intend to build on the property in Walker. My topic is the stormwater drain that runs between 374 Dakota and our house at 400 Dakota. It empties onto the Jade Pig property behind our homes. It then flows northwest into Alpine Township and then turns southwest and ultimately flows into York Creek just north of 4 Mile. I've lived in this home for 28 years. The drain back then was about 2 feet wide and you could step across it. Today at the source where where the pipe dumps into the drain, it's now about 6 feet wide and 6 feet deep. If you go just a short distance down beyond this, it quickly widens to about 15 feet wide and about 10 feet deep, and runs that way all the way through Alpine Township, through Timber Creek condominiums and on to York Creek. It's probably more of an issue with the Timber Creek condominiums. Right now, the erosion is such that there are 3 threatened condominiums in that project where the stormwater drain is undercutting the land. And we have some pictures that we'll provide for later where it shows the bank erosion and anyways, the pictures, you all have to look at them real close, but the undercut is about 4 feet under the first tree, and that tree is going to come down soon. The possible additional water runoff from this property, the property is high in the middle and slopes both ways. The additions of the buildings, the roads, the parking, sidewalks, that water is going to go somewhere, and this drain cannot hold any more water. So that's my comment for that, and thank you.
Hello, I'm Linda Altmeyer, and coincidentally, I also live at 400 Dakota Drive. I've seen him there. I bought my home 49 years ago because I fell in love with the unspoiled natural beauty of the neighborhood. The woodlands, green spaces, homes sitting on an acre or more, the creek flowing behind my property, these all contributed to the charm and quality of life here. The diverse population of wildlife provided fascinating, fun, teachable opportunities for my 2 young sons. Neighbors looked out for each other through good times and bad, and lifelong friendships were formed for both parents and children. If this sounds like an idyllic quality of life, that's because it was. But there was one big problem. The driving range for Greenridge Country Club ran behind the houses on the west side of Dakota. There was a retention pond on the west side of the range that was home to swarms of mosquitoes that pervaded the neighborhood, greatly detracting from the enjoyment of being outside in the good weather months. The mosquitoes were not just a nuisance, they posed serious health risks. The mosquitoes, in turn, attracted a bat population. At dusk, we watched them darting about in large numbers eating mosquitoes. While we appreciated their help, they did little to abate the problem. And in fact, they created an additional problem. The bats were finding their way into homes and walls, sometimes with unfortunate and expensive consequences. As one example, a family close to our home had to tear out walls to remove dozens of bats dead and alive. The mosquitoes and bats had become a problem for Greenridge Country Club too, so they filled in that retention pond. The mosquitoes and bats moved out and our problem was solved. The complex of rental units proposed by Jade Pig has many unfortunate implications for the character and quality of life in our neighborhood. One of these is the plan for 2 retention ponds, one adjacent to Springbrook residence. The other would be built on that old driving range behind Dakota residence, a pond even larger than the one Greenridge Country Club filled in, and closer to homes on Dakota, extending well inside the 150-foot buffer zone. I understand that you must follow zoning law, even when at odds with aspirations of the master plan, but please don't allow this to happen. Thank you.
My name is Cheryl, 418 Dakota Drive Northwest, and some of those pictures that you're looking at are from behind my home. We bought our home 34 years ago, and like Tom said, we could step across that creek when we bought it, and now there is so much erosion, it's unbelievable. That creek cannot handle any more water. The remaining green space has returned to its natural state, therefore we have lots of wildlife. Fox, deer, turkeys, owls, pileated woodpeckers. I've even seen eagles fly over our area. Where will they go? We are not the only ones that live here. For the well-being of the city and the wildlife that now calls us home, it should remain natural. Green space benefits everyone. We are a quiet neighborhood. Traffic is low and mostly slow. This makes our neighborhoods safe. High-density developments lend themselves to have more issues with crime. We are a low-crime neighborhood. With the proximity being so close, we may have issues. The streets of Dakota, Springbrook, Greenridge, and Bayberry are the sidewalks of our neighborhood. We walk our pets, we run, we jog, we ride our bikes on these streets. I certainly hope there will be no connections through our neighborhood, as this would greatly affect our safety. I know that there appears to be nothing on the plans for this to happen, but I am familiar with how developers change things as a development progresses and not for the good of all. This development does not belong in our neighborhood. It does not fit the flow of our neighborhood, as you mentioned earlier with the previous development. Thank you very much.
Hi, am I on? My name is Cindy Coleman, and my husband and I, Richard, we live at 583 Kingsbury. We're neighbors with Mark. And we are not adjacent directly to the property, but I'm here to concur with everything that's said, and in addition, to take one more stand for the animals that we see, that we know would not be in our yard and in the neighborhood if it wasn't for that undeveloped woodland area. And so I have a script, but I'm going off script. But I do have questions still remaining regarding them, and just wanted to refer to something I recently heard about, a non-human rights project, which is a group of litigators, and not in Michigan necessarily. They probably laugh us right out of here in West Michigan, but what they are advocating for are the non-human rights of animals to have a habitat, and they have been there for a long time, foxes, eagles, and so forth. And so I'm wondering, for the developer, what accommodations will be made. I've heard a mention of aquatic animals, and I've heard mention of all these other creatures. So I'm wondering about, I understand there will be trees left, but what accommodations who reside in an island that is surrounded by roads, human housing, fencing, and businesses? Will they instead become nuisance or roadkill? As opposed to being our backyard buddies that we enjoy. When hostas are eaten in our yard, we're like, dang, wish we would have stayed up a little longer so we could have seen them do that. Or, you know, the people say deer are a nuisance, and it sounds like most of us here feel like, you know, they were here first, and they've been historically in that area for a long time. My second question has to do with something maybe I learned tonight about the zoning in 1980 something. Can the zoning be changed to make that area, which we so love and so many people could enjoy, into something where there might be walking trails, biking paths, bird watching benches, and so forth, and continue to use the area? I did hear something mentioned about a dog walking area and a playground. I'm assuming those would be private. This is not, that's not public use. I guess that's the gist of what I have to say, but I do have, we have a neighbor who has been living on Kingsbury on the south side, Jan Topping, and if it's okay, I'm going to speak for her, and I ran this past her. She spoke to me about what she would be liking to say if she was able to come. She's very elderly. She's lived there longer than any of us, and her concern is the same. Back in the day when she and her husband used to walk on a daily basis through the neighborhood, they would see deer, foxes, turkeys, and so forth.
Ma'am, your
time's up.
If you could bring it, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anyway, that all changed, and she feels like when the Kingsbury Place moved in there, they all moved to that area. So where will they go?
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Hit the mic again. The button.
This button?
There you go.
Now
All
nobody
right.
touch the button.
My name is Barry Nobles. I live at 3669 Timber Creek Court in Comstock Park. I am Vice President of the Timber Creek Condominium Association, and I'm grateful to be here in this democratic process, and also grateful for the work that your staff has done, Ms. Anderson, to examine this process and this project and its effect that it will have not only on the community in question, but for us downstream. Just as a side note, how do you put a value on walking through that woodland and watching your grandkids fall in love with nature? I mean, just to walk from your house and be able to do that. That's wonderful. But that's not my point. My main point here is that I'm here to object to the further destruction of York Creek. Water comes down that creek, and we have several 90-degree turns in that creek that are underneath our homes. And that's not usually a problem until it rains. And water up in the Greenridge shopping area, it comes down the depth of a 6-story building, rushing down that stream, gouging out the bottom of those banks, around the corner, undercutting trees, undercutting homes, and that's my main concern. And this hasn't been a problem that's really new to you, and I'm sure many of you have the history. The runoff from the Greenridge Shopping Center has decimated that creek, but it started early. In 1993, there was a 5-year study done in the York Creek watershed to bring it up to the standards of the Federal Clean Air Act, and it was shown at that time that it was not in compliance. That was 1993. 2005, another major study was done by a group, by the group that was organized in 1998, the ELGRO, which stands for Lower Grand Rapids River Organization and Watersheds, and it found it was still out of compliance, and the erosion continued. So finally, in 2011, Grand Valley students through a project there, attempted to mitigate the erosion by securing bushes and Christmas trees along the banks. Great intention, didn't work. In fact, it didn't work so well that you, the city of Walker, worked in coordination with Timber Creek Condominium Associations and Alpine Township and invested $33,000 to try to stop the erosion. And it was well-intentioned, and it didn't work. The erosion continues. You just heard a man say some years ago you could step over the creek. Now, in places, it's 40 feet wide as it undercuts the bank. So this proposal is causing an additional, and it's been going on for 30 years. And people have looked at the issue, they've tried to solve the issue, it hasn't been successful, and now we want to add the overflow from the ponds to dump into York Creek. Past practice has given us no confidence that the pond will hold the storm runoff for 186 homes, hundreds of yards of pavement, various driveways and landscape elements. Almost 50 acres of water runoff will go into those 2 ponds. And if you know anything about the ponds behind Greenridge, you see they're full of weeds and overgrown. Even if they work in the beginning, they won't work now. And I'll just end it by saying I have some pictures for you to look at. And my hope would be that in the list of things that you're looking at. Did he hit the button? Sorry. The list of things that you're looking at, if you could include a comprehensive environmental impact statement, not only on the development, but on the downstream process as well. Should I give these pictures to? Can I bring them up to you?
To Tricia, please. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Stacey Nobles, and I too live at 3669 Timber Creek Court in Alpine Township. There's obviously an abundance of reasons why this project shouldn't go forth. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of those that don't have a voice, our four-legged friends and all the other wildlife. Due to the long history that this land has been vacated of humans, they have made it their home and they thrive within it. As you can see, and I have several pictures to show, there are deer, foxes, owls, and a whole host of others that maintain and strive in this current environment. After researching and reading many master plans and the Resilient Pure Michigan Plan with climate and green space concerns, how possibly can anyone in good conscience allow the plan to be passed? I ask you, where do all the animals go? At the very least, a current environmental study needs to be done of the entire area, or even better, just not to approve this plan at all. But I thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bill Allen. I live at 345 Dakota Drive Northwest with my wife Michelle, who's sitting in the audience. I would like to first thank you for hearing us. I concur with many of the people that have spoken about the effects on our wildlife. I appreciate Tricia's comment that they're going to investigate the endangered and threatened animals, but it's more than just that. One of our major concerns is about protecting the hawk population in the area. Research and investigation needs to be done regarding the nesting and living environment of the hawks who live in and nest on the proposed project area. When we moved here into the area in 2011, we could easily observe on a regular basis flying around and soaring in the area. As of this past Sunday, May 29, we observed and took photos of 4 hawks flying over the area. Since there's been such an increase in their numbers, it is obvious they are nesting somewhere in this area. And since their nesting areas are protected, it would be unlawful to disturb their nests and potential eggs. In compliance with the Migratory Bird Act of 1918, hawks are protected from harm, including their nests and eggs. The treaty reads, the Migratory Bird Act of the United States is a federal law that makes it unlawful without waiver to pursue, hunt, take, capture, kill, or sell nearly 1,100 species of birds listed therein as migratory birds, including our hawks. The statute does not discriminate between live or dead birds. It grants full protection to any bird parts, including feathers, eggs, and nests. So we've already answered, there's not yet been a study done regarding this. We see that there is a planned study. We appreciate that. But since this issue involves federal laws, we expect to get these answers prior to development. And we thank you very much, Tricia, for your assurance that that's the plan. We are all here taxpayers of the city of Walker, and we expect your support. You must answer our questions. Thank you for your time and consideration. We are citizens of this great city of Walker and hope to remain so.
Good evening. My name is Linda Lanning. I live at 547 Kingsbury Street Northwest, along with my husband, who is also here. And I certainly concur with all of the wildlife implications, the water drain implications, but I'm raising a different consideration, and that is of traffic. I have to get out onto Alpine Avenue every day for my job, and I have to come home every day, and the traffic is getting horrendous. I don't know if any of you guys travel on Alpine to come from a suburb into Alpine or from our neighborhood, Kingsbury neighborhood. There is a traffic accident at Center Point Road at least once a month, if not more. And I would like to have a traffic survey done. I would like the city of Walker to find out how many traffic accidents occur right in the place where these people who are going to be living up there in the new development, if that comes to pass, where they're going to be adding hundreds of cars to an already overworked grid. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Robert Johns, and I live at 368 Dakota Northwest with my wife, Betty Beth. My wife and I have lived at 368 Dakota Northwest since August 1996. And at that time, we were aware that there had been plans to further develop the former Greenridge Country Club. The project we're discussing tonight looks very similar, to that particular plan in terms of the number of units. At that time, as was mentioned earlier, that plan called for those to be condominiums. The current plan calls for those to be townhouses. Question I have, again, is, whether, I'd like to clarify whether the proposed units would be rental properties or available for ownership, and believing that ownership would lessen the transient impact on the neighborhood and better establish stability and environmental preservation. A chief concern is further degradation of the water quality of water in our homes, as has been discussed. I'm not certain as to the total number of well and septic systems that there are in our neighborhood, but I'm guessing it may be close to 100. A water quality water table impact study may provide guidance as to how to protect the quality of our water for the existing properties and how it can be restored, improved, and protected should this project move forward. The new plan calls for a sewer main drain to be installed between our house at 368 Dakota and the Norton's residence at 362. I believe, Scott, you may have spoken to this a little bit earlier. That was a concern or a surprise to us to see that sewer line there between our houses. But in addition to the environmental impact that the project presents to the neighborhood, we would appreciate clarification as to how our property will be accessed, impacted, and maintained. We anticipate that our wells and drain fields would be protected if the project moved forward. We understand the need for additional housing in Kent County and the desire to develop this property. We do want to be a good neighbor, but included in that statement is a desire to be a good steward of our environment and the life ecosystem that thrives on this property. We are hopeful that an alternative plan that would preserve much more green space can be put forth at a future date. This would be more in keeping with the master plan of preserving open space between the retrofit mixed-use area to the west and the neighborhood preservation area to the east. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Nathan Maness. I live at 3361 Springbrook Drive. I'd like to take a little bit different angle and just talk about property density. I know we talked about zoning. When that zoning was done, a lot of the apartment complexes like Orchard, well, I'm not sure, but York Creek definitely did not exist, Kingsbury, and that has brought a lot of population to that area. My question is, for the city, services come along with that population. Are we prepared to hire more firefighters? Are we prepared to hire more police? There are situations, as pulling this right off the Walker Fire Department annual report, the number of personnel required for various response times depend on all types of calls. National standard for response set by the National Fire Protection Association 1720 for suburban fire departments like the city of Walker is to place 10 responders on scene in 10 minutes of a call 80% of the time. Standard to measure the performance of major incidents where 10 or more personnel is needed. Right out of the annual report, Walker Fire Department meets the NFPA 1720 standard 17% of the time. I believe we have well-trained firefighters, but they cannot combat gridlock. If you can't get the fire truck there, there's not much they can do. And Alpine is a little bit of a disaster. Especially like if you put in, you go down Alpine anytime during Christmas time, you know it's bad. And to get that services to and from places is a big, big deal. And to kind of give you an idea, Walker Fire Station 3 would be the one that services this complex. They are pretty overtaxed. Out of all the fire stations, Walker Station 1 services last year was 166 calls, Walker Station 2, 212, Walker Station 3, 307. So where this is located is in that very, very corner, and now you're putting it away from that fire station. It puts those people in jeopardy as well as other people. So I'll kind of give it over to Ron. He's going to talk a little bit more about the police and that's. So, gotta make sure this. Good evening. My name is Ronald Perleski. I'm at 3203 Springbrook Drive, and I'm the fiscal section manager of Michigan State Police Office of Highway Safety Planning. I come to this meeting to express my concern and share some facts and data about the City of Walker traffic crash statistics. And I'm going to share with you the following facts. In all of Kent County, Walker places fourth highest in crashes behind the city of Grand Rapids, Wyoming, and just 3 crashes behind Kentwood. So essentially, we're almost tied for third. And these facts are coming from the Michigan Traffic Crash Facts from University of Michigan Traffic Crash Facts. The crashes in Kent County follow the rankings in population except for Walker. While Grand Rapids, Wyoming, and Kentwood are both the top 3 leading crashes in population centers in Kent County, Walker is only 7th in population. So we're 4th, 3 crashes away from 3rd, but 7th in population. That same trend follows fatalities, not just injuries. Further, we can say a breakdown of Walker using data collected from the Michigan State Police and analyzed by the University of Michigan Traffic Research Institute, UMTRI. My first heat map, as pulled through the query of the website, Michigan Traffic Crash Facts, anyone can do this, shows of the past 5 years the data for Walker. You can see in the heat map that Alpine Avenue has the highest density of crashes in all of Walker. You can see the heat map that Alpine Avenue has the highest density of crashes in all of data for all of Walker. The crashes are car crashes, motorcycle crashes, cars hitting and injuring pedestrians or even killing them. My second heat map is the same data, but over a 10-year span. You can see that the data does not lie. Alpine gets even more deadly with the increased numbers of years for the data. The lighter portions on this map get lighter, and the darker portions on Alpine get more red over the 10-year span. So it's not just a 5-year fluke of data, it's over a decade that Alpine gets more and more deadly. And you can zoom in on these maps, Traffic Crash Facts, and you can see individual intersections. And the 2 intersections that this proposed development will dump into on North Center and Center Drive dump right into the 2 deadliest intersections in all of Alpine. Again, right here, my pin drop map number 1, which is my 3rd map, shows the crashes for the last 5 years involving children 9 years of age or younger. 10 years of age had so many more crashes that pin drops for accuracy could no longer be used due to density of only allowing 500 for the map. Just to give you perspective, ages for children, if we could include that 15 years of age and younger for those that cannot drive, they're the ones that they're not going to be here to speak tonight, and they're the ones that are getting injured on Alpine. The data's right there. I just want to end with saying that this 186 high-density residential apartment complex will be pushing 186 more families and children into the most dangerous road in Walker. I do have more pictures and data if anyone wants it. I think I'm going to give you guys some of my copies.
Thank you.
Well, that's a tough act to follow. Jerry Schiffman, 354 Glen Oak Drive Northwest, and I just want to shout out to Tricia. You've done a stellar job tonight and prior to this in private communications, so appreciate it. We're here today to voice our opposition to the proposed Jade Pig development on the open green space property adjacent to our existing Greenridge neighborhood to construct 186 residential townhouse rental units. My name is Jerry Schiffman. My wife Cheryl Schiffman and I are located at 354 Glen Oak Drive Northwest and have been since 2005. We enjoy the highest quality of life that the city of Walker has to offer in Ward 1. As I'm sure you're aware, Ward 1 has the least amount of green space and the largest buildup of high-density dwellings compared to the other wards in the city of Walker. Green space is a necessity, not an amenity, to maintain a healthy ecosystem and sustainable environment. It is imperative to preserve this property as open space, even as recognized and stated in your own City of Walker master plan. The master plan also goes on to state that it is a wetland area and needs to be protected. Furthermore, the quality of life that we and our entire neighborhood have enjoyed would be severely and permanently disrupted by development of this nature and density. Beyond the environmental concerns that I have cited, our neighborhood would experience a critically negative impact from the very high level of density that is being proposed in the form of a great deal of additional traffic, noise, and light pollution, as well as water shedding and potential groundwater contamination and or damage to our aquifers. Our household domestic water supply comes from a well, as is the case with several of our neighbors. This property currently acts as a buffer zone from all of the stores and high-density complexes that are between our neighborhood and the Alpine Corridor. And speaking of Alpine Avenue, which is already severely overburdened and overcongested with traffic, this would only further exacerbate an already challenging situation. Any consideration given to spilling off excess traffic onto Springbrook from River Ridge Drive would be potentially devastating to the quality of life and safety of the residents of our neighborhood. As was stated earlier, we have no sidewalks. Those streets are our sidewalks, and they are, at this juncture, very pedestrian friendly. Although this issue evokes a lot of emotion from us as residents, our objections opposing a development of this nature is solely based on factual information. Our coalition of neighborhood residents have organized ourselves as a fact finders first, and that's what we're here to present today. We respectfully ask of this commission that you deny this application that you are reviewing due to the negative impacts that a development of this magnitude and density would have on the environment and safety of our existing residents. If you feel you do not have enough information to take action, you've already agreed to table this, so I'm grateful that you're going to table it. As elected public officials, we're grateful for your willingness to serve and simply asking that you take action to protect the health and well-being of our environment, our community, and those of us tax-paying residents and property owners of this community that you've been elected to serve. Thank you for your consideration.
Good evening. My name is Tom Bowman. I reside at 410 Glen Oak Drive Northwest and have been a resident of the Greenridge neighborhood for decades. Trish, I appreciate your noticing how youthful we all look. My father, Robert Bowman, an attorney and businessman, represented the neighborhood in the lawsuit in the 1980s trying to stop a high-density development on what was at that time the Greenridge Country Club. The concerns then are many of the concerns now with this current proposal. Traffic congestion, noise pollution, light pollution, air pollution, ecological issues, trash, crime. In the 1980s, the neighborhood was assured by the developer and the city that these issues would be addressed. Proposals and promises were made, such things as buffer zones, berms, landscapes, and so on, would be included and committed to. So the development would have no adverse effects on the quality of life in the area. Unfortunately, these issues, just as feared and predicted, plague the neighborhood and the surrounding area. And now we're being asked to accept a new development being shoehorned on a property where it does not belong. Simply put, this is a bad fit, and this request should be swiftly denied. Doing so does not stop the developer from placing such a development in a more appropriate location. And keep in mind, this neighborhood was here first. It should have precedence. It should not be, it should have precedence, not a developer whose only interest is maximizing profits, and of course will not suffer the result of such a development. I thank the city for its time and consideration in this matter and ask this request be denied for the reasons obvious now and for what I fear will be the obvious in the future. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Michael Vanderklock. I live at 10 Dakota Drive, Northwest. My wife and I have been residents there 15 years. We abut up to the north drain coming out of the Alpine, and I can attest to the incredible widening and number of trees that have fallen down and into that in just the 15 years that we've been there. I will try to go ahead. I've got written comments that we'll leave. I'll try to just add to things that haven't already been said. I may help out a little bit. The PSAP is not similar in density or character to the adjoining Greenridge neighborhood. The Greenridge neighborhood has a population density of about 1.5 to 2 people per acre. When I calculated out for the proposal in the PSAP, it's running about 32 to 34 persons per acre. The addition of that condensed population and the accompanying significant visual changes, noise, and unlimited pedestrian access will permanently and completely alter. Greenridge neighborhood is unique in that it is one of the only rural residential properties remaining in Walker and specifically in Ward 1. And to change that, to put such a large population density next to it will permanently alter that. There will be no mitigations for that. That also does not conform with the master development plan and does not match the intensity of the adjoining neighborhood. The property, as mentioned, is one of one small number of open green spaces. It contains thousands of deciduous and evergreen trees, a variety of shrubs, natural grasses, wetlands, and transitional wetland species. These plants obviously are critically important to things that have already been mentioned. The PSAP provides for removing thousands of these trees and replacement with less than 75 individually installed trees. It eliminates over 95% of the vegetation that's currently there now. And trees and plant, and so a virtual total elimination of that entire ecosystem. Additionally, trees and plants work as integrated network of successional species. You cannot replace or replicate that once it has been realized. This would be something that cannot be repaired later. The PSAP also does not include how oversight and support of the approximately 600 to 800 people that will be living in that confined area will be accomplished. Such a significant rental population will be accompanied by ongoing structural maintenance and social needs. No space is allocated in this plan for management facility or equipment or material storage. No provisions exist for efficiently and effectively responding to situations involving residents of that complex that would impact the rural residential characteristic of our neighborhood.
Time.
So I appreciate your time. Certainly allow these, we'll have these written comments for you also with more detail. And thank you.
Before my time starts, I've got a lot here. Am I able to ask another resident for their 3 minutes?
No, sir.
Then I'll get going and I'll pass off my paperwork to somebody else. I'm Logan Norton. I live on 362 Dakota Drive, and the first thing that I want to say is I don't believe that the developer intends to actually build these apartments themselves. The property is currently for sale, and when I asked the city of Walker, they were not aware of this. Fast forward, we've got the 1989 election where it was on the ballot, and 330 Greenridge has been zoned since that time as single-family residential, but behind the scenes, Walker has said that that was a clerical error and changed that over to high-density residential. We request more information, documentation on this process, as the property has been designated as single-family since 1989. We've got examples of the buffer zone and what it's supposed to look like. I'll give you a copy, and many of you received my email, where it shows an appropriate berm with trees on top to separate Springbrook from River Ridge Drive. And you can't see it, but there's 75% of the homes or the windows on the back of my house facing the driving range. Every single home that's within this neighborhood is designed that way for maximum viewing of the golf course. In accordance with the original development proposal from 1988 and the subsequent judgment, it's the developer's duty to provide appropriate visual screenings, landforms, and plant material that will be provided for the existing residences, and the existing tree lines will be preserved wherever possible. Yet I don't see any trees, I don't see any berms, I don't see any grading, I don't see anything that's going to try to separate besides them drawing a line at 150 foot in the buffer zone. And if you look here, you can see some yellow. These are all the trees that are planned to be cut down within the buffer zone. So we're really worried that they're going to come through and clear cut before any ecological data has come through. And that's just what I'm going to say about that. I can go on and on about how their current plans do not
concur with the agreement for the buffer zone. They're putting facilities within the buffer zone with the retention ponds. And again, I can go on and on about that. We're going to talk now about the fact that the survey is from 2002. When I asked the city of Walker when the survey was from, they did not know, but the current survey is from 2002 and does not accurately reflect the land. Back in 2009, the sewer was replaced up Greenridge. A massive amount of fill was piled to the north side of Greenridge. This hill is not reflected on the survey. The topography presented is not the actual lay of the land, and it is accurately represented on the 3D map if you can pull that up. During the aforementioned sewer replacement, crumbling asbestos pipes were removed and disposed of in dumpsters, but all the contaminated fill was created or was used to create the hill that is missing from the survey. You can see up right above Greenridge Drive. I've been in communication with the city of Grand Rapids and their officials who cannot deny the presence of asbestos within this hill. When the neighbors brought this to the attention of the contractors, the response was that the space wouldn't be developed. So it was fine to leave it there and they'd contain the contamination. To accomplish the grading that they have proposed, they would need to disturb this hill. And this brings things full circle. Why did the developer use a survey from 2002? I can see that hill from my back window. No doubt it exists in contradiction to your survey.
Thank you.
Melanie, could you finish up for me real quick? Just one page and then we're all done. It's up at this podium right now.
Bob Parent, 374 Dakota. In accordance with the original development proposal from 1988, the subsequent judgment of 1899 is the developer's duty to provide appropriate visual screenings. Landforms and plant materials will be provided for the existing residences. Existing tree lines to be preserved wherever possible per the original development plans, yet I see no trees, no berm, or plant, all to meet the requirement for myself and residents of Dakota Drive. In fact, I see they plant specifically inside the buffer zone and cut significantly into Zone 2's buffer zone to install the retention pond. Over half of the retention pond is within the buffer zone. It is my understanding that no buildings or structures are to be inside the buffer zone. When I research retention ponds, they considered a stormwater control structure. The 1989 judgment specifically bans any buildings or structures from being within the buffer zone. The extended plan also details the extensive tree clearing, which will extend well into the buffer zones throughout the entire border. The approved C-PUD form 101689 states that the existing tree line is to remain. The developers do not plan for any of legal requirements of the buffer zone besides spanning 150 feet outward from the property line into consideration. That's it. And my backyard as well, 70% of the back of my house looks over what was the old driving range. And it will severely affect our site plan that we've had I've lived there for 30 years. Thank you, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Michael Newell. I live at 3139 Springbrook with my wife and my daughter and my two cats who would have been here tonight, but they're sleeping. The neighborhood is over 100 years old, 100 years of Walker heritage, and the entire time there's been God's green earth as a buffer from the hustle and bustle of Alpine Avenue for both us and the wildlife before us. While we agree that there is a need for more housing in Walker, the property in question is not a suitable location for such a development. The environmental impact will be drastic. The erosion issues created are shipped downstream to Alpine Township, and the additional strain from increased population, density and traffic, police and fire will increase the risk of injury on the surrounding communities. I also think there'll be a great increase in trash, of which I pick up a lot already. I've called Jade in the past to address this issue, and it has not been addressed, so I pick up the trash a lot. A lot of it is caught in the prickers and the birds that also affects the wildlife. There are other possibilities for this property and other properties to develop that are currently on the market. We do urge you to explore those. We have you, our elected officials, to stand for us. Please hear your constituency. Please hear those who can't win this fight without you. We respectfully request that Walker and the developer commit that no work take place pending the decision. that the following list of tests and studies be completed by a third party: a comprehensive environmental impact study on the entire property, emphasizing water drainage and tree removal, tree survey, soil sample, asbestos, PFAS, stormwater, net zero adherence, private well analysis, wetland analysis, traffic study, MDNR species study. Another consideration is working with Kent County, Grand Rapids, and other funding agencies to purchase the property for use as a park or designated green space.
Hello, my name is John Najelski. I'm a resident at 349 Greenridge. My house is the second from what will be the cul-de-sac that you mentioned going forward. I'd like to thank all of you, our respected officials, and as well as my fellow citizens for bringing multiple communities together for this cause. My wife and I moved with our then very young family from Greater Grand Rapids. We lived in the city of Grand Rapids, and we fell in love with the property. We had friends that are now our neighbors. And I had people ask, why Walker? And when I look on a map, why there? You've got the highways, you've got Alpine, Targets behind you, why there? And being on the property, you can't hear the highway. You can't see the glow from Alpine. Sometimes in the winter I can, when there's no leaves on the trees. So I hate to be labeled as kind of a not in my backyard kind of a person, because this would be in my front yard. Looking out my front window across the street, I have the fewest probably trees in the existing kind of buffer. So I'm assuming that the buffer of 150 feet will probably likely be lawn, and it's going to let essentially the glow of the developed Alpine business area through to our neighborhood in terms of constant light at night. So it is taking away the character that drew us to Walker. The character that's listed in your master plan for single-family homes, that is what drew us from Grand Rapids to the city of Walker. That's what's kept us happy as Walker residents all these years, for 13 years. And that's what I ask of you to help us preserve in our neighborhood going forward. And then I guess one other concern is the cul-de-sac would be a wonderful addition, because we've seen many plow trucks have trouble getting out of there currently. But looking at the proposed plan, I can't help but notice the way the development is positioned, that there appears to be ample green space between the proposed new roads and that cul-de-sac. So as we talk about traffic concerns and congestion and first responders getting to those scenes, I'm just thinking ahead 3-5 years as a solution being, let's connect the cul-de-sac easily through that path in between the proposed condominiums, and that is a high concern for me as a resident. So thank you very much.
Am I on? Well, good evening. My name is Pat Lennon. I'm a lawyer with the Honeyman firm. I was introduced by my client earlier tonight, and I'm proud to be here with CWD and Jade Pig. One thing I'd like everyone to know and to check into, as maybe some of you have, is one of the good things about tonight that I'm hoping we can all agree on is that CWD and Jade Pig really do a first-class job when they do development work. The other thing I think we'll agree on, and that we've heard from the chair and from Ms. Anderson, is that tonight is the first step. And we understand we're going to be tabled and that this public discussion will continue at the next meeting. You don't hear us pressing you for a decision right now. In fact, what you've heard is we're willing to do what Ms. Anderson's asked of us. We're moving forward with a meeting with all of you in the neighborhood and in your environment. And frankly, we're looking forward to continuing this dialogue with you, our neighbors, and any others that would like to share their thoughts about our project. As we do, we're going to be asking you and reminding you that we've tailored this project to align with the ordinance and to align with our rights under the ordinance. And I'm sure we'll be talking more about that as well. But in any case, my name's Pat. I want to introduce myself, and we look forward to moving forward with all of you. Thank you.
Hi, I'll make this pretty quick. I'm Jeff Thompson. I'm probably one of the only representatives from Alpine Township here, but I'm on the northwest side at 3630 Megan Court. I live there with my wife. I've lived there for 23 years. My daughter's here. She and my son have fished in the alpine, in the drain back there. So there actually are fish in there. So the concern that I have, it revolves mostly around the density and how the planned development kind of blends in with the existing neighborhood. And I've taken liberty of gone and mapped out all the acreage and of the 25 directly abutting private properties around the entire region, and it ends up being 23.56 acres for 25 houses, which is 1.06 units per acre surrounding the entire thing. And the other concern that I have in terms of density is if you really look at the actual usable space, if you take into consideration the topology and the easements and the buffer zones and all of that, it ends up not really being 49 acres, but more like 20 acres, which turns out to be something like 9 units, or 9 units per acre instead of, 3.76 is what the claim was. So I just wanted to mention that and thank everybody for the attention.
Hi, my name is Karen Stockwell, and I live at 155 Greenridge Drive. Earlier, my husband and my daughter were here. Earlier, my daughter and my husband were here, and we were trying to give her a teaching moment as far as how this works. But she is the next generation to live up there in the Greenridge area, and we adopted her a year ago, and every night we do a critter patrol. So we drive up and around our block onto Bayberry and come back onto Springbrook, or come back onto Greenridge. And she is fascinated with all of the deer, turkey, fox, and everything. The owls, our house has numerous large windows, and she's always pointing out all of the animals. And when we told her we were coming here this evening, she wanted to know, she's very concerned, where are they going to go? That is one thing that's really concerned of me, the traffic, the crime. Maybe that doesn't concern any of you because you don't live up there, but that is one of the reasons we moved up there, and we did move from Grand Rapids. We've been up there for over 20 years, and it is a wonderful neighborhood that is not overpopulated, and we see our neighbors bike and walk in the street. We have no sidewalks up there, so that is a valid safety point for our people. And Pat, I understand that Jade Pig probably really does a very good job of building places. We just don't want it in our area, in our front yard or our backyard. No offense, but thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Paul Jackson. My wife and I live at 3100 Springbrook Drive. And I want to go on record as being not in favor of this project at all. And I feel that the basic reason for that is the habitat and the protection of the habitat. We've got a lot of animals in there to call that home, and they're very happy to do so. Beyond that, however, I've got a couple of very specific concerns. As per the submittal narrative dated May 18th, 2022. I don't know whether you want to pull that up or not, Tricia. There's a statement in there that tree removal will be kept to a minimum along the east property line, et cetera, close quote. Inasmuch as there's going to be a 150-foot buffer zone, I question why is there any tree removal whatsoever? Secondly, as per the civil plan, page 3, this seems to show an existing Greenridge Drive being connected to a new road system. There's a circle up in the, is that page 3? Yep. Okay. there's a circle at the end of Greenridge Drive that appears to suggest that that's going to be true. As per Ms. Anderson's memorandum dated May 23, 2022, page 6, the graphic that accompanies the roads, traffic, and transportation portion of the master plan notes that there's no connection proposed between Greenridge and the proposed development. I guess I would urge you to give that some very serious consideration, because there seems to be a couple of contradictions in there in terms of what's going to happen insofar as that. And I think I can speak on behalf of all of the people here. We do not want a connection if this project were to come to pass, which we hope it does not. We do not want a connection between this project and the existing neighborhood. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tina Dykstra, and I live at 365 Dakota Drive. Back in 2013, me and my husband, we moved from the city of Grand Rapids as well, up into this beautiful location where it has been nothing but just an amazing place. I mean, you're close to everything, but yet you feel like you're in the country. You have that country feeling. You know your neighbors, everybody walks around, and it's a community in itself up there, along with the habitat. I mean, that was one of the things that drew me in. And it was nothing for me to see, 5, 10, 15 deer in my yard, not alone like 20-some turkeys come across. Mind you, the turkey poop I can't stand. But anyways, it fertilizes. So it all revolves, it just goes around in a circle. So with that being said, is that this, with you cutting down the trees, and I've seen the buffer zones through some of over by the Springbrook side between where Greenridge Apartments and Target is like a hill with a couple trees. If that's a buffer zone, then, that's deeply gonna impact our community and the habitat that we have there. So I do have a question. Am I understanding that the developer's statement correctly when they say that the current proposed plan does fully implement the 1989 restrictions for the buffer zone? Yes or no? It's a question.
That's to the developers.
What?
It's to the developers.
Oh, to the developers. Yes, thank you.
Ma'am, if you could maintain your focus on providing that input for the board, please.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So anyways, that's my question that I had regarding about the buffer zones that's going to be provided. And I concur with the gentleman that spoke before me, is that why do we have to remove all the trees? Why does all the trees have to be removed? I know that people on that side of Dakota Street, that's not the view that they want to see from the back side of their windows, is a structure of a bunch of townhomes. Just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi. Christine Uzarski, 309 Dakota Drive. My house has been up there. I live in that wonderful neighborhood. It's lovely. It's absolutely a treasure here in the city of Walker. I love living in Walker. Lived here all my life. I'm not going to tell you how long. But I just would like to say to you gentlemen, thank you for being here, and no thanks. I also have a job as a delivery driver for Alpine Floral. And I drive mostly the northwest territory of Kent County, but I travel all over the city as well. I will happily drive on the East Belt Line, 28th Street. I'll go downtown. I'll be on Burton and Division. I'll be happy to do it. I dread driving down Alpine. And I have to do it every day for my job. The worst mile is between 3 and 4 mile. Bam, right where they want to have, I don't know how many hundreds of cars come out. Already, we deal with traffic, we deal with accidents. I can set my clock every day. I know it's between 3 and 4 o'clock because I hear sirens on Alpine every day. So, in talking about the traffic, I know there are bad drivers out there. I see those every day too. But it's not all bad drivers. It's bad planning. And how many more fender benders, car crashes, injuries, and deaths do we have to have on that stretch of Alpine? And is it going to be me or a member of my family or these great neighbors of mine? And I really don't wish it to be so. Fix Alpine first before you add one more car to it, please. But thank you. This is amazing.
Okay, hopefully, got another one.
Hi, I'm Andy Weatherhead, 363 Greenridge. Apparently, I live closest to what's going to be happening here. So, my big concern is, and I've lived there for 28 years, raised 5 kids there. Great place, great neighborhood, great neighbors. Have really enjoyed my time there. I mowed that driving range for about 15 years. Some really good golfers came out of that neighborhood. My son's a professional golfer, so thank you. We mow trails in there. We have for 28 years since the golf course closed. And everybody uses it. I can't tell you the number of cars that come down there, and it's a great piece of property. My big concern is the asbestos dump, and that's got to be checked out. This huge hill in the driving range, that's when I quit mowing it, because the city of Grand Rapids put new sewers in. They took, and I witnessed this every day for a whole summer, they would dig out the asbestos pipe, put it in lined containers, encapsulate it, and take it off. And then they would dig the dirt up that was around these pipes, and they dumped it on this golf course. I don't think that was the right thing to do then. I certainly don't think it's the right thing to do now to tear it up. Just wanted to bring that. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. At this point, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to make an unusual motion. I am going to make a motion to suspend the public hearing, not close it, because that would mean there would not have to be another public hearing on another preliminary site plan. So I'm making a motion to suspend the public hearing until an additional preliminary site plan is before us.
Support. Okay, a motion by Tyler, supported by Steve, to suspend the public hearing associated with this particular project. And I believe that staff has provided us with a list of items that need to be addressed. And I think that we'll also expand upon that to include some of the commentary that's been provided this evening and communicated to us through emails and letters. So that being the case, all those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. 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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So in terms of the listing, as I mentioned, staff has provided that. At this point, do we want to try to enumerate anything additional that's been offered this evening to that list?
I have a couple comments that I'll try to make quick. I'll leave it to my 3 minutes. Private property rights have been mentioned here, and they do have private property rights, believe it or not. People have said we should outright deny this rather than tabling it. If we do that, that is not giving them due process. They have the right to try to develop this property. The planning commission has the right to put things on there that they have to do. If we outright deny it, they have the right to sue us, then we'd be wasting all your money. as far as the no disturb zone, one thing I want to mention, if I can get my iPad to come back. If you read the no disturb zone consent judgment, no place on there is Walker City listed. It is not up to the city of Walker to enforce this lawsuit. It is between the plaintiffs and the defendants, and they are all listed on the lawsuit. That doesn't mean Walker has to enforce it at all. That is between the defendants and the plaintiffs. I just want to make that clear. We are not listed on there. We have no jurisdiction over this. It's between the plaintiffs and the defendants. We are aware of it. It should be enforced in the thing, but it will not be enforced by us necessarily. So I just wanted to make that clear on the city of Walker is not listed as part of any of this. So also you guys say you don't have any open space and you don't want to lose your open space. And I did a quick look up at the open space in your neighborhood. Somebody named Hoax owns 1.7 plus 4.21 acres open space. Trevor Ganger owns 3.77. Jason McCleary owns 8.4. Lamro Trust owns 3.5. Chester Kondracki owns 5.9, and Miley owns 5.8. That's 26.7 acres of open area within your own neighborhood that could be developed too. Just something to think about as your neighbors sell, that things like that can happen. That's how development happens. So I just wanted to bring that up. I thank you for coming, by the way. I really appreciate this. It shows, I'd be there if it was my neighborhood. It shows great concern, and we are, in my opinion, we are nowhere near moving forward on this, so.
Chair, if I can. Like Tyler said, thank you all for coming out. This is a great showing of what the neighborhood is concerned about, and that we appreciate hearing from all of you. It's pretty rare that we get a room this full at these meetings, so thank you all. One point of clarification: this board is appointed. I am the only elected official here, so and I just say that these are all folks who give a lot of their time to make sure that they're working in the best interest of the city and the interests of all of you here, and that's I think they deserve a lot of appreciation for that. Another name that I think should be mentioned, Commissioner Burke, who serves on the City Commission with me representing the First Ward. He's out back there, and he's been an incredible advocate for all of you and all of your concerns throughout this process, and he and I have been speaking regularly because he and I both represent this part of the city. And we hear you. We have been getting not only here in this meeting, but through email contact, just an overwhelming amount of contact from all of you. So we're trying to make sure that we're being attentive to that and responsive. What I will say, some of the main concerns for me, the open space is of course very important. In the First Ward, we're pretty well developed, and making sure that we're conscientious of making sure that we take opportunities where we can to provide open spaces is something that we want to make sure we're doing. In our master plan, we do have this as open space, so that's a discussion that we're going to have as we go through this process to make sure that we're working through that concern. Drainage and grading, of course, are huge concerns. The way that I look at the grading plan, it's kind of shocking to me the way that some of these slopes are designed. So working through that. The drain, of course, is a tremendous potential issue, and making sure that we understand what the impact will be there. I am very concerned about the traffic. Center Drive, those intersections on Alpine Avenue are just some of the most miserable. I've lived in the city of Walker my whole life. I live further down Alpine, and I know exactly the problems that we have there. So working through that is going to be significant, and all of the concerns you all have raised are going to be very important parts of the conversation that we have moving forward on this as well. But I just want to close by saying I appreciate it. Everyone was very constructive and made sure that there was no animosity towards the board here today, and we've had some meetings where that's not been the case. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being respectful, and appreciate the conversation.
Could I ask just one question about the suspension, since it's different than what you had presented as the next step forward? Could you just clarify exactly what the next steps
As far as the public hearing?
We suspended the public. Yep. We haven't taken action on the full.
Suspended the development, we suspended the public hearing to accommodate you guys for the next.
So it's just
Okay.
making sure that it wasn't something different than tabling, that was all.
Okay.
But I got it.
To assist in responding to that, City Attorney Jeff Sluggett, like to have him offer a few comments.
Jeff, do you want to come over here for a microphone?
Two quick things. The effect of the motion that was made to suspend the hearing, the effect of that is to adjourn the public hearing. So the public hearing has not been closed. You will have another opportunity at some point that the public hearing will be opened again. The second thing that I heard the commissioners talk about, although I don't think they've taken any formal action yet, is I think they're going to adopt a motion, or I'm going to recommend they adopt a motion, to direct staff to work with the applicant in an effort to arrange a site visit, because my sense is that's something the Planning Commission would like to do, and also to hold some type of work session, which would be a somewhat more informal discussion with the applicant, hopefully on the same day if we can arrange it, but that's going to be between the applicant and the Planning Commission. So the work session would be a public meeting. So.
In terms of the recommendation that, maybe I'll give this to Tyler to read, the suspension or the adjournment is based upon, if you could read the following.
So you want me to make the motion to table?
Well, no, you've made the motion, but if you can offer to the.
I didn't make the motion to table, I made the motion to adjourn the public hearing. There's no motion on the floor yet.
Correct, but in terms of the reasons behind that, if you could enumerate.
I'll have to read this twice then.
Well,
unless I make a motion.
You may make it as a motion. But
I will make a motion to table the preliminary site plan for River Ridge Townhomes, 186 unit residential development located at 402 Dakota Drive, 740, 350, and 330 Greenridge Drive based on the following findings. The applicant must revise, add, or correct the items listed in the planning director's report dated 5/23/22. Number 2, the applicant must provide more information as it pertains to the following. A current topographical survey must be provided. B, an overall stormwater impact analysis must be conducted. C, an analysis must be conducted by the Kent County Drain Commission as it pertains to impacts on county drains on the subject property and downstream. D, more work must be done to understand the history of events and development that has significantly impacted the Alpine Walker Drain. D, a wetland delineation must be conducted to identify any potential regulated wetlands on the subject parcels, along with contact with Eagle to assess whether any wetlands would be impacted by the proposed development. F was recognized as a 150-foot buffer. That has to be between the applicants or the developer and the people in the plaintiffs. So that should be in their plan. But what Walker will enforce is our own ordinance code. We cannot enforce a lawsuit that does not involve us, correct? That does not involve us. We cannot enforce that lawsuit. G, a traffic impact analysis must be conducted to identify any areas recommended for improvement related to the surrounding road networks and the intersections. H, a private well analysis should be coordinated with the Kent County Health Department. I, the applicant must make contact with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources to have them conduct a species analysis to ensure that the subject site does not inhabit it for any threatened or endangered species. And then item number 3, the applicant has not yet held a neighborhood meeting. This should be completed prior to it being placed on future PC agendas. And it is item 4, it is suggested that the city have a work session with the applicant, a public work session with the applicant regarding the preliminary site plan for this project.
Got a motion?
Support.
Support by Steve. Any questions?
And then this is tabling the site plan. So the public hearing will continue. Is it okay? I'm just trying to understand how these fit together.
is tabled, which means everything pauses and then it can continue later.
Okay, we have a motion and.
No.
Excuse me.
Joe, come on.
So we have a motion and support on a motion to table action on the PASP. Unless there's any questions, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
You can come talk to me after the meeting.
You want to take a brief recess?
Yeah. Turn your mics off. 5-minute recess.
Okay, we're going to recess this meeting for the next 5 minutes.
Can I butt in? Can I butt in for just a second? They just recessed for 5 minutes.
Oh, they did? Oh.
I don't know what to do with it.
stepping up.
Say hi to Jeffrey. Nice to meet you. Yeah, you too. Say hi to
You know what's funny is the Timber Creek condos, whatever, they were built, the last one was built in 2002. They took off.
Certainly, certainly.
I think we lost Joe.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he left. I saw him walking with all his stuff towards the door.
Okay. He made a motion to adjourn.
Wiser man than me.
I just wanted to let you know that I have all of these items that the oh, what's that?
This was more you said that you were talking for.
Oh, okay. So I will get all this stuff scanned and I'll send it over to everyone.
Okay.
There's multiple photos and
How soon do you think the developer would be back?
well,
Huh?
It's a big list.
Yeah.
yep. So we are still booking out into July. Our second meeting in July is one item away from being full. So,
What about our next meeting here?
our next
15th?
meeting?
Yeah, what's on our next agenda?
Oh, gotcha. Sorry, Tyler. The next agenda, has the Deltaplex rezone. They're requesting a rezone from C2 to IPUD. We had a U-Haul interior access self-storage. They missed the SPRC meeting, so I had to bump them to the second meeting agenda in July. The third one is, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank here. We just,
Well.
do you remember what it is?
Yeah, but you've got a full agenda coming up.
Yeah, just whatever,
Yes.
it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we appreciate the preparation for this meeting and getting the public comment, and I think we got some direction there. I didn't know whether Frank wanted to add anything more at this point.
Is he still here?
I'm still here.
Oh, hi, Frank.
He's popping right up like a mole. Role, right? So I stay out of the way, but we do a lot of stuff in the background, as I'm sure you're aware. And I want to thank Tyler and Tricia for meeting with some of the property owners yesterday, just to let them vent a little bit. Those were the people that, two of them spoke here tonight.
Yeah, that started out as very confrontational. They were coming at us, and all we did is listen, and then we just how this process works, and they all kind of just went, calm down. It's like, oh, you know, it's not us against them.
Well, we listed their concerns on a whiteboard. And we said, take a picture of this board, because what you've got on the board is what we've got on our board.
I read most of that board into the motion tonight. That's what that motion was.
And I will add that asbestos issue needs to be researched. If they
Who's
don't have
responsible for that, though?
Well, the property owner, and if they don't have a BEA because they've owned the property that long, I think that's something that legitimately, I mean, you saw in that 3D model that Regis put together for us, there's that big blob sitting in the middle of that property. The first thing I thought of, what is that? That's not a natural landform. But I don't know, so I'm not gonna say anything, and sure enough, it's confirmed, but they need to do some borings out there and see what's going on, what's in it.
Is it possible to get a 3D topo like this of like the proposed?
We're gonna require that.
Because I would love to see what that's gonna look like with those buildings like that.
Well, here's where I'm gonna be a little bit more aggressive than I normally am with this group from a city planning perspective. And I'm gonna use as an example what we did with English Hills. English Hills, when they first came in
and all the way back to the Pulte plan. Those plans were built in 2 dimensions and then engineered, and they didn't look at the property itself at all. And what you ended up with was what I think we can do here, which is you say, how many units do you need? Does that match the zoning and the master plan? If you can get over those hurdles, then you say, well, let's do the LESA approach. And what is LESA? It's land evaluation and site assessment. So we have, that's why I sent that base map out today. And if we take a walk, hopefully soon, so you guys can see that site green, and we can literally walk it, you can start to say, there are some areas of this property that are more open to development than others. And that's what we did with English Hills. And we've clustered the density around Center Drive, or excuse me, in that area, Northridge Drive. Here, you've got a similar situation with North Center Drive. And if they're saying we need 186 units, well, if that's 180, if you look at what we did with Standale West Town, that's 9 buildings. So it's 1 building smaller than Standale West Town. And if you can put those along North Center, and then maybe have a ring road or something in there, and preserve the other 70% of that site, that may be the way out of this thing. Because that would protect the 150-foot buffer, it would protect all of the open space that was there. They would still need to do significant grading, but I got news for you guys. Did you look at that topo plan, the proposed topo? All I see are major dollar signs. I don't think there's a basis in reality for that. So you've got the option to do iterative planning here, and that's what I hope we'll do through after the walkthrough and the working session meeting. And I'm gonna help out on that one, because I think there's a way that you guys can really do something that's consistent with the master plan and preserve a lot of open space, minimize impact on the Alpine Walk or drain, and still get a high quality, higher density use along the road, because right on the other side, there's high density residential. So that, now you're doing the transitioning.
Yeah, the edge matching.
Yeah, so HDR across from each other, and then the site runs uphill, and that's all green once you get those buildings in there. And then on the back slope, that stays all green too. And you don't make a road connection there. The slope's not gonna let it work anyway. So there are options here to do something that I think will solve a lot of the questions and concerns that are out there. Just be open-minded if you would, and keep in mind what we did at English Hills, which is let the property determine the plan. So, there you go.
Frank, I hate to give you a compliment.
Yes, I know, we hate each other.
I really appreciate you getting involved in this one. This might be worse than the other two that we just got through. I don't know, but that neighborhood back there, go drive it, it's beautiful. That neighborhood is something else.
It's an anomaly for that part of town. It's township living in the city, you know?
Rich people that lived on Greenridge Country Club.
Yeah.
Private country club. I mean,
So where the asbestos come from, City of Grand Rapids?
And I don't know.
I'll jump in on that. That's alleged at this point, right? I mean, we just heard the first hints of this today.
Yeah.
What was that?
Or was it yesterday afternoon? That when the asbestos pipe that was in Springbrook was beginning to fall apart and become a maintenance responsibility or liability, Grand Rapids came in and rebuilt that entire sewer down Springbrook. This was in the last 10 years. So the accusation is that they were careful about the pipe itself, but they took material that was around the pipe and were looking for a place that wanted fill, and they brought that up to this property. And this is the first we've heard of it, but we'll have to look into it and see if it's legitimate. If it is, it's really the property owner's problem, because they're the ones that allowed that material to go in there.
I was gonna say, the City of Grand Rapids is gonna end up owning that for a big price.
Well, the Grand Rapids hires a contractor to do the work. They don't hire the contractor to place the fill someplace else. They hire him to put it in their truck, and then it just goes wherever the contractor can get rid of it. And if it's asbestos, you'd hope it goes to a landfill. But they may have been looking for some shortcuts. And again, that's all alleged, we don't know. But it needs to be studied further.
I'd like to say good job, guys, tonight. It was an hour and 10 minutes of comments, which if you go to a Grand Rapids meeting, it'll be 3 hours of comments. So it went really well tonight. So
Well, and you did a good job complimenting the people in the audience. One of the things that we're trying to do, but I think we're getting better at it, is listening. You know, people don't feel that they're being listened to when they get hostile. But I think what you saw from this audience, and I was expecting it to get hostile tonight, but you know what? They came in with facts. There were a lot of concerns for maybe the softer issues, but you know what? We've got to listen to that too, and where we can. So that's where your staff is trying to balance things out. We also have the legal issues there, so we're talking that through as well. And we also have the fact of a developer who wants to make money on the property. We've already developed the equation for doing a good project on here that I think will benefit, will be as good as we can get when it comes to protecting property and protecting the neighborhoods and still allowing a reasonable use of the property. So you guys did a good job tonight. I applaud you for that.
I make a motion to adjourn. Sorry.
Support. All in favor? Gone. Thank you.